My name is Thomas Whitfield, and for 31 years I was the principal of Lincoln High School in Springfield, Illinois. I want to be clear about that up front because it matters to the story I am about to tell you. I was a man who dealt in facts: test scores, attendance records, budget spreadsheets, discipline reports. I ran a school of 1,400 students and 200 staff members. I was not a person who spoke easily about things that could not be measured. That changed on September 8th, 2023. On that date, at approximately 10:15 in the morning, my heart stopped for 4 minutes and 55 seconds during brain surgery at Memorial Medical Center in Springfield. And in those 4 minutes and 55 seconds, I met something that I am still, 14 months later, struggling to find the right words for. I am going to do my best, because the message I was given was not for me alone. I understood that clearly when I received it, and every day that I sit on this and say nothing, I feel the weight of that obligation. So here I am. Let me take you back to the spring of 2022. I was 65 years old, newly retired after 3 decades at Lincoln High. My wife Carolyn and I had moved to a smaller house. The kids were grown, and our daughter Natalie was already giving us grandchildren, and I was adjusting to the strange luxury of not having anywhere I absolutely had to be. I had headaches, but I had always had headaches. I attributed them to stress leaving my body. I was wrong. In April 2022, the headaches changed. They became pressure. Pressure behind my right eye, pressure at the back of my skull. My vision would blur occasionally. Carolyn made the appointment. I went because she told me to, the way I had been going to the doctor because she told me to for 40 years. The MRI showed a meningioma, a tumor on the membrane covering my brain, about the size of a golf ball. The neurosurgeon at Memorial, Dr. James Chen, told me it was almost certainly benign. Meningiomas rarely turn malignant, but that it was large enough and in a position that required removal. He was calm about it. He had done hundreds of these procedures. He had excellent outcomes. He showed me the scan and explained everything clearly, and I sat there, nodding the way I had sat in so many meetings, nodding at things I would need time to process. I processed it that night, in the dark, listening to Carolyn breathe beside me. I had run a high school for 31 years. I had told parents that their children were not coming back. I had called ambulances and written eulogies for staff members, and sat with students in crisis at every hour. I was not a man who frightened easily. I will tell you what finally moved me past the fear. It was Marcus, my son, who called me the night before the surgery. Marcus is 39 years old, and he teaches middle school history in Springfield, and he is, of all my children, the one who inherited the most of my tendency toward facts and evidence. He said, "Dad, I have been thinking about what to say, and I cannot find the right thing. So I am just going to tell you I love you, and that whatever happens tomorrow, I am proud of you." I said, "Proud of me for what? I am going in for brain surgery. I did not choose to have the tumor." He said, "I am proud of you for the 31 years, for Lincoln High, for every kid who came through those doors and made it out the other side with something you gave them. That is what I am proud of." That conversation stayed with me through the night and through the pre-op and through the last thing I remember before anesthesia, which was the anesthesiologist asking me to count backward from 10, and my thinking, I wonder if I will make it to 1. I made it to 7. But I will tell you the truth. That night in the dark, I was frightened. Not of the tumor, of the surgery, of being unconscious, of what might happen if the hands that were so steady in every other area of my life let go without my permission. I had the surgery on September 8, 2023. Dr. Chen had scheduled it at 8 a.m. Carolyn and our son Marcus drove me in. Natalie flew in from Denver. They were all there, in the waiting room, while I was in the OR. They were there for 8 hours. The first 4 went as planned. Then something shifted. My heart, which had been perfectly healthy in every pre-op workup, went into a sudden cardiac dysrhythmia. The surgical team responded within seconds. Compressions began. The defibrillator was used twice. For 4 minutes and 55 seconds, my body was in that operating room, but I was somewhere else entirely. I need to tell you what I found there. Not because I expect you to believe me without question. I am a principal. I spent 3 decades requiring evidence. I will tell you what I experienced, and I will let you sit with it. But I want you to hear the message, because I was told, as clearly as I am speaking to you now, that the message was the point. The whole thing, the tumor, the surgery, the stopped heart, was the delivery system. The message was the cargo. I left my body. I know that sounds like something from a movie, but it is the most accurate description I have. One moment I was under anesthesia in a cold, bright room surrounded by masked faces and the sound of machines. And then I was above all of it, looking down at myself on the table. I saw the blue of the surgical drapes. I saw Dr. Chen's hand still holding an instrument. I saw the paddles being applied to my chest. I saw my own face. I have read accounts of near-death experiences since returning, and many people describe a tunnel. I did not have a tunnel. What I had was a transition, like walking from one room into another, except the second room was not a room. It was everything. It was pure light, but not light the way a lamp produces light, more like the thing that light is trying to be when it does its best. Warm, absolute, and somehow intelligent. The way you would feel if the most loving person you had ever known was also the entire sky. I was not alone in it. There was a presence with me. I will call it what it presented itself as, because I do not think I am capable of improving on the name. A being of light. It was not a man or a woman. It was not a figure I could fully look at in the way you look at a face, because it was larger than that category. But it was completely present with me, more present than any other person had ever been in my entire life. I felt known by it in a way that I had never felt known. Not by Carolyn, not by my children, not by my closest friends. Known to the bottom. Known without any aspect of me hidden or softened. And completely, without hesitation, accepted. I want to be honest about what happened next. My first instinct was not wonder. My first instinct was a kind of shame. Because when something sees you completely, all of it, the pride and the impatience, and the times you chose your career over your family, and the apologies you never gave, and the fear you carried so long you forgot it was there, when all of that is visible, you expect judgment. That is what we are trained for here in human life. We are trained to expect that to be fully seen is to be found lacking. The being saw all of it, and the response was not judgment. It was not even forgiveness exactly. Forgiveness implies an offense that required addressing. The response was something simpler and stranger and more radical than either. The response was, of course. Of course you were afraid. Of course you stumbled. Do you not understand yet what you are? And then came the message. I am going to do my best to give it to you faithfully, though I want to acknowledge that putting it in English sentences reduces it, the way putting an ocean in a glass reduces the ocean. What was communicated to me was this: every human being on earth is, right now, in the middle of something they do not understand the meaning of yet. Every difficulty, every loss, every moment of confusion or grief or failure, every single one of those moments is a piece of something that will eventually be completely clear. Not partially clear, not mostly understandable. Completely, absolutely, retrospectively obvious in a way that will make everything make sense. And the second part, which I believe is the part I was specifically asked to carry back: no one is doing this alone. The loneliness that human beings feel, and I have seen a great deal of it in 31 years of high school, that loneliness is not a reflection of reality. It is a limitation of perception. The same way you cannot see oxygen, but you are surrounded by it and sustained by it in every moment. Every human being is surrounded by presence, by connection, by something that cannot be fully perceived with human senses, but is real. More real than the floor under your feet. I saw my father in that place. He had died in 1998 of a massive stroke. He was a quiet man, a postal worker from the south side of Chicago, one of 12 children, serious and proud and not given to softness. We had a complicated relationship. I had spent years working through what that relationship had made of me. He was there. He looked young, younger than I had ever seen him, maybe 40 years old. He did not have the guardedness he carried his whole life, the armor that Chicago in the 1950s and 60s had made necessary for a black man trying to provide for his family. He was without that armor. He was just himself underneath all of it. And he looked at me with a directness that he had not been able to manage when he was alive, and what he communicated was, "I see you, Thomas. I have always seen you. I was not able to show you that while I was in the body. I am showing you now." I do not have words for what that did to me. I was a man who had been carrying a wound for 25 years that I had not fully acknowledged. And in 4 minutes and 55 seconds, it closed. I came back to the sound of my own name, Dr. Chen's voice, though I could not open my eyes yet. Then the bright, flat light of the OR ceiling. Then the weight of my own body, which, after where I had just been, felt dense and slow, like moving through something thick. The recovery from the craniotomy itself, separate from the cardiac event, was its own process. My head hurt in ways that I had not anticipated, and I was tired in a way that went deeper than ordinary exhaustion, a kind of cellular fatigue that made everything feel slow and distant. The hospital room was too bright and too loud and too flat after where I had been. I was moved from the ICU to a regular room on the 3rd day. Carolyn brought my reading glasses from home, which she knew I would want, even though I could not yet read without getting a headache. She brought the broken-in fleece blanket from the foot of our bed that I have been sleeping under since 1998. She brought a photograph of our grandchildren from Natalie's last visit, 6-year-old Jalen and 4-year-old Camille, grinning in the backyard. I looked at that photograph for a long time. I thought about my father, the way he looked in that light, young and without the armor, himself at last. And I thought about what he would have said if he could have come back and sat beside the bed. I think he would have said, "You are doing fine, Thomas. You have always been doing fine. I just could not show you that I knew it. I can show you now." They moved me to the ICU for observation. The tumor removal had been completed successfully before the cardiac event. Dr. Chen came to see me that afternoon, and he told me what had happened, with the calm professionalism I had come to expect from him. He was glad I was awake. I told him I was glad too, and I meant it in a way that went considerably deeper than he understood. Carolyn was the first one in. She sat on the edge of my bed. She is not a woman who sits in chairs when there is something more direct available. And she held both of my hands and looked at me with the particular look she had been giving me for 42 years that means, I need to know you are really there. I was really there. And I was also somehow different. Not in a way she could see with her eyes, but she felt it immediately. She said later that it was like talking to a person who had been walking around with a splinter for years and finally had it removed. Still the same person, just with something gone that had been causing difficulty for a long time. The splinter was the fear of not being enough, fear of being seen fully and found wanting, fear of what happens at the end. That entire architecture of fear was simply absent when I woke up. I have been thinking for 14 months about how to share what the being of light told me. I have written drafts and thrown them away. I have talked to a therapist who specializes in near-death experiences. I have read books. I have prayed in ways I had stopped praying since I was 12 years old. And I have come to this. The message is not complex. It was not meant to be. The being gave it to me in a form so simple that even a man who spent 30 years demanding evidence and complexity could not miss it. You are not alone. You have never been alone. Not in the hardest moment you have ever lived through. Not in the 3 a.m. terror of the dark. Not in the years when nothing seemed to be working. Not even in the room where your body was dying and the machines were going quiet. My daughter Natalie flew home to Denver 4 days after I was discharged. At the airport, she hugged me for a long time in the way that adults hug parents when they have been frightened. The hug that says, I know I take you for granted and I am aware right now that I should not. She said, Dad, are you going to be okay? I said, Natalie, I am better than okay. I am the most okay I have ever been. She looked at me for a moment with the specific look of a daughter who knows her father well enough to know when he is performing versus when he means it. She decided I meant it. She nodded and she got on the plane. That was 14 months ago. I have had 3 follow-up MRIs since then, all clear. Dr. Chen tells me the resection was complete. The meningioma is gone. What remains? The thing that did not go anywhere. The thing that is, if anything, more present now than before, is the knowledge that I was given and the obligation that comes with it. I am delivering that obligation now, here, to you. There is a presence with you that you cannot fully perceive with these senses. It is not absent when you are suffering. It is especially present when you are suffering. And it knows you, knows every single part of you, and its response to everything it sees in you is not disappointment. It is love of a kind that makes our largest human version of the word feel like a sketch. I am 66 years old. I led a high school for 31 years. I have made thousands of decisions, some wise and some not, and I have tried to live in a way that made the not wise ones smaller over time. I have been given a message that I did not earn and did not expect, and I am delivering it now the best way I know how. If this has reached you at a moment when you needed it, if you are in the middle of something that feels impossible, if you have lost someone you cannot imagine living without, if the loneliness has gotten very loud lately, I hope it helps. I hope you will pass it on to someone else who might need it. The link is right below this video. Here is what I know now, standing on the other side of 4 minutes and 55 seconds that changed every single thing. The suffering is temporary. The love is not. The separation is temporary. The connection is not. The fear, all of it, every version of it, is temporary. What waits at the end is not darkness, and it is not silence, and it is not the absence of everything you have loved. What waits at the end is the being that made you and knows you and has been with you every step of the way. I met it. It told me to come back and tell you. So here I am.